Well, welcome back to another tutorial. We just wrapped up our Down on the Farm SVG bundle last week. Here's one of the items. One of the more popular items, the red barn. As you can see, it doubles as a gift box. And we have kind of a little gap as far as scheduling. So we decided that we're going to do one more quick little fall bundle before we get into Thanksgiving and Halloween. And it's a set of little baskets and boxes. One of them is kind of a luminary as well. And today we're going to put together our autumn gift basket. It's a very pretty, and as you'll see, a very simple and quick little project. Say you want to give someone just a little gift, whether it be for a special occasion or a thank you, whatever it may be. I think this will fit the bill. I'm going to put a little bit of crinkle fill in here and probably get some, like an assortment of nuts or something like that. That's pretty fall-y, I would say. Maybe some walnuts or, yeah, I think I'm gonna go walnuts, and I'm trying to think of what else is a little more regional. But anyway, so we have 3 sections that are identical, as you can see here. And what we're going to do first off is we're going to, when we have these green panels that are going to go on first, and then we have some decorative panels. Whoops, gotta be careful with those. And as you can see here, I have well, I've done some pre-inking. We're actually going to ink the structure this time, which we don't do a lot of, but I am going to do that, and I'll show you how I do that, because I'm going to do it while the actual thing is together. Now, typically, when I ink, I try to ink things when they're flat, so that's why I did these, as well as these, and pretty much anything else that needed inking. I inked it while it was flat. But the structure itself, I find it to be a little bit easier to ink it when it's put together. So anyway, with this, I'm going to start with the assembly. So actually, we're going to put the panels down first. And these overlays are going to go right on top so that the little leaf element there is nice and green instead of the red that you see there. So we can do this one of 2 ways. We can glue this to this first and then glue it on there, which probably makes a little more sense, and it will probably be easier and less messy, because then we're only playing with the possibility of glue blemishing the actual structure once instead of twice, because we're only touching it once when we go to put this whole section down. So either way, to avoid redundancy here, if you want, as you're watching this, if you want to skip ahead, what you're going to want to do is you're going to do this 6 times. Okay, so you should have a total of 6 of these, and you should have a total of 6 of these with this little motif on there. We're going to glue those down onto this green piece first, and then we're going to put it onto our structure here in a minute. So if you want, you can skip ahead. When you see me putting this down on here, you can pause or begin playing again if you're scrubbing through. Otherwise, you can just hang out with me, and we'll do a little bit of chit-chatting and probably share some tips with you along the way. I would say that for the most part, the few tips that I typically give when working with any paper project is to be as sparse with the glue as you can. Less is more. Things will dry faster, and you will make less messes. Be less messy. Okay, there we go. So we got 2 done. Probably should have done those beforehand, but that's okay. This is going to be a quick project anyway, so I'm not really overly concerned. Okay. And I've been pretty good about keeping the cap on my bottle haven't had to clean it out as much. And today I walked in the studio and of course my cap was off, and I do notice that the flow of the glue is not as consistent, but right now it's actually coming in handy because I'm working with an element here that has some delicate little areas where I don't want to get too much glue so that it doesn't make a mess and blemish the little green areas behind the motif. So it's kind of working out. I usually have about 10 glue bottles in my drawer. Most of them are brand new. I try to keep one ready to go that has a cap on it, but you know how that goes. Things just never seem to work out. Life just gets in the way sometimes. Okay, so more than halfway home here. And then the beautiful part about this basket, and I guess the beautiful part of a lot of Dreaming Tree projects, is everything is nice and polished. Even the interior is lined with beautiful patterned paper just to make it look nice and complete, nice and colorful. And one thing that I really enjoy, especially living where I live, everyone's very friendly and personable, and talk to a lot of our neighbors, especially neighbors with kids. I appreciate the kids being able to hang out and play and kind of have the sort of childhood I did, where you don't have to constantly worry about them and set up play dates and all that kind of stuff. And I like to kind of show my appreciation with just little gifts here and there. Lately, especially in the summer, it's been stuff out of the garden and any other little thing that I come across, maybe when I'm at the grocery store or out doing prop shopping or who knows what. It kind of, as they say, it takes a village to raise a child, and that couldn't be more true. Okay, so I got the last one in place here, and that's ready to go. So again, these we're going to glue onto the sides here. I'm just going to do that now while this thing is flat, and it should be okay. I'm a little worried about, well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's put this together first. So go ahead and get your glue. All of these are identical, so it doesn't matter which one you select first. Just pick one up, get your glue on that large tab there. I'm going to spread that glue out, grab the next piece, line it up, and press down, let that get its initial hold, then fold it over onto itself. These little scallops up here, they should line up perfectly, sit perfectly right on top of the layer below it, is what I'm trying to tell you here. And that's a good indicator that you've got everything nice and lined up. We'll do the same thing here. Okay, because I think what we can do is we can actually put this thing together and still have it flat. So this is totally optional, and I'm doing it this way in case you decide that you want to ink this as well. I think this is going to lend itself to a much easier inking. And let me see, yep, and this can actually sit flat even when we have it put together completely, so that's good. Okay, so let's put this together. And as I've mentioned many times, when I'm putting these projects together, it's always my first time putting it together as well. Now obviously, I have a prototype that I can look at, and well, kind of helps me make sure that I don't goof it up. But if I can make it my first time around, you can absolutely make it your first time around. And the more you make our projects, the more familiar you'll become with our processes, and the more it'll just kind of make sense. Okay, so we've got that together. Okay, so we can put this down flat, and I'm going to begin gluing the panels on. Okay, so just throw your glue on the back of this piece. Try to work it out to the edges, obviously. You want to make sure that it doesn't come peeling off. And we're going to get this nice and centered in this little area here. Just make sure that before you commit to placing it down, make sure you've got a nice even border going all the way around. Okay, and we'll just move on to the next one. You're going to do this a total of 6 times. So you'll notice here on my version, I've got some areas in these little seams where I have ink, and there's some areas that don't. Halfway through, I decided that if I was going to ink it, I would do that with the version with solid score lines. I'm using perforated score lines right now, and I kind of don't like the way it's looking, so I left half of it uninked, and I'm going to take a look at it when it's all said and done and decide which one I like better. Now, luckily for me, when I photograph this, you're only going to see 3 sides of it anyway, so I get a pass. But you can learn from my mistakes as you watch the video. Sometimes inking structures like that with perforated lines, sometimes it works. But in this case, because we're using a purple, it's a little bit of a bold, strong color, and it's really making those perforated areas stand out. So aesthetically, to me, that is not really my cup of tea. So I'm going to put a stop to it. Okay, so one more here, and then I'm going to actually put the little scalloped areas in place. Those will be nice and simple, and then we'll work on the interior panels once we actually get the structure all together. It'll just make it easier. And if you do have a little bit of glue that squirts out, just rub that off with your finger before it gets a chance to set, and that way you don't end up with a mess. Okay, so while this thing's still flat, find the little scalloped pieces, which I have here. Okay, so these little scalloped areas are actually going to go on the inside section of this little portion of our structure. Okay, so if you are going to do any inking, you're going to want to actually ink these sections here. Okay, so this is going to be a little awkward, but that's where you want to place your ink because that's the part that's going to be visible. The underside will not, unless you flip it up, but that's not the idea. The idea here is to line it up and place the little panels onto this surface here. It's like a little lip around our basket. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. And I'm just going to gently hit this with a little bit of ink just to, like I said, dirty it up, give it a little bit of a weathered, vintagey feel. So it's not so, well, so it's not so sterile, I guess, because it's kind of playing off of our last farm bundle, and I had a lot of fun kind of dirtying that up as well with my inks. So we're going to stick with that whole concept here. Okay, so anyway, back to these little overlays. These are going to go nice and flush up against the little score marks there. Okay, and when you put them down, you can try to arrange them so that they actually cover up those perforated score marks if you are using the perforated score mark version. As I mentioned, we do include solid score lines, and you can certainly use that version if you'd like. So that's going to go right there. And kind of doing it this way so I can visually align this so that it does kind of cover up those little score marks, and that looks like there were never any score marks at all. So that works out nicely. And on to the next one. So you're going to do this a total of 6 times. Then we're going to put the large panels in there, and we'll eventually just go ahead and close this whole thing up by putting the bottom on. And as you can see, well, I don't know if you can see it. Sometimes the subtleness of some of the inking that I do doesn't always show up in the video, but you'll probably see it more in the photos. And then the cool thing is, if you want to add more, you can certainly do that after you get everything put together. Just go around with your inks and just kind of have some fun with it. Like I said, I'm working on a little side project. It's a haunted barn. We've got some little bonus goodies that we're gonna hook you guys up with as well, because I really wanted to customize it, and in the process was thinking about you guys. So you'll get some bonus little freebies, which I'm sure our Halloween lovers will be excited about. Okay, but moving along here, same thing. Just grabbing my little panel, popping it in place. Just make sure that you get that flat part nice and lined up with the little score marks there, nice and centered, so you have a nice even border around the little scallops here. I just have a couple more to go. And now the interior panels, we had to wait until this thing was put together to put those on, because part of the reason we created those was to hide little tabs inside to make it look more polished. So everything's been sort of thought through to give you the most appealing outcome. Okay, that's looking great. Especially that inking just really takes it over the top, in my opinion. So whenever I hop into the Dreaming Tree group and see that you guys spent the time to ink, I get really excited, because it just shows that you really put a lot of pride into your work, because you know that it really helps it shine. Okay, so we've got our little scallops in place. We can go ahead and put our little panels inside now. Okay, in this case, with this pattern paper, we are using, we're using the yellow here. Okay, and so that's going to go right inside. We're going to have a nice even border all the way around, like so. Okay, so we're going to do this total of 6 times, just like we did on the outside. And if you want to skip ahead, just get one of these panels on each of the 6 sections, nice and centered. Actually, I take that back. Leave 2 of them don't put your panel on 2 of them, actually, because what we're going to do is we're going to attach our handle, and the 2 that you don't put them on, make sure that they're opposite sides, opposite from each other, I should say. So I'll show you what I mean here. I'm going to put this one down, then we're going to skip one. So actually, you may just want to hang out here and not skip ahead, because the handle, the way that it's engineered, we kind of hid the handle as well, so everything looks nice and seamless. It's not completely hidden, but it's pretty hidden, I guess. Okay, so we're going to skip this one, we're going to move on to this one, and then we're going to skip this one too. So these 2, this one and this one, we're going to skip. We're going to put panels on these 2. We're going to get our handle in place. Well, actually, you know what? We should probably close up the bottom first. Kind of going in all sorts of weird orders here. You're probably thinking to yourself, Leo, what are you doing today? It made sense in my head, and it's still fine. There's no really wrong way to do it. Until there is, but it's rare. You can usually get away with doing things in all sorts of weird orders and still come out with the appropriate outcome, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay, so these two are the ones that we're gonna leave open for now. I'm gonna pop this one in place here. Almost looks like a little pie inside, kind of, especially with this little, what looks like a pie crust. Okay, so with that done, let's just put the bottom on this thing, close this up. So you'll notice that you have two of these pieces. One has a little L on it, that is your liner. The other one does not have an L. We're gonna put that one on first. Select any tab and get some glue on just the one tab. Get that glue out to the edge. I had a little too much there, so I'm just wiping it off on another piece. That won't hurt anything. And then take this piece and get it nice and centered and lined up with this tab. Get the edge of this piece that I'm holding butted up to the score marks. There we go, that looks good. Okay, you can kind of pull that out of the way for a second. And now, we'll push these up. Well, not yet. Let's get our glue on the remaining tabs here so we can close this up. I'm throwing a little bit of glue on the entire tab, and then I'm going to do one thin little line along the very edge so I can spread that glue out and get a nice clean seam like so. If you kind of encroach over that area, just wipe it off with your finger so it doesn't leave that glossy sheen that it tends to do. And if it doesn't stick perfectly the first time, we can always fix it. Now flare these up a little bit, so as we push down, grabs more of that surface area, and try to align this side first, the side opposite of the side that is already hinged. Get that nice and centered, and the rest of it should pretty much fall into place. And then just run your finger along the very edge here. Make sure that that is making good contact. Okay, and then we'll flip it over and push down from the inside to get the rest of that tab to hold firmly. There we go. Going back here, I'm gonna push down again, making sure that everything is touching nicely. Making good contact. And that looks solid. Okay, great. All right, we can flip this over. Now, take your glue and just run some of that glue along the tabs here. And then a little bit in the center. And that is for our liner. It's gonna hide those tabs inside. Pop that right in the center and press down. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna put some crinkle fill in here anyway and fill it with gifts. They're gonna be focusing on that more than anything else. So, okay, now, last step here is our little handle. And you'll notice that, well, we have this piece here, and there's a little score mark, okay? So that is obviously going to go here, and we're gonna use that score mark as kind of a guide to help us with the alignment. Now, we had to separate, or kind of break this up into two pieces because this is more than 11.4 inches long, and we're gonna kind of fuse these together. Before we do, I'm gonna grab a dowel, and I'm gonna take and put this handle between my finger and the dowel and just kind of curl it. Just give it a natural curl just so that it gets ready to bend and become a handle. I don't want it to be totally flat. You don't want to overdo it either. I'm just kind of helping it somewhat, and then once we actually glue it in place, it should, well, it should figure out how much it needs to bend on its own. Okay, so with this one here, you can see that on this section here, we've got a little score line. So what I want to do is I'm going to put glue on half of this here and spread that glue out all the way to the very edge so that we get a nice clean connection there. But then I'm going to put glue on the second half up here. Okay, now we're going to take this piece and we're just going to pop it right on top of this one, right up against that little score mark. And obviously these little scalloped areas here need to match up as well. That's how you know that you've got it lined up correctly. Just like that. And just press and hold that for a moment. And actually, while you're doing that, while it's still kind of setting, it may help to just kind of bend it a little bit. Just get it used to being round. Okay, maybe hold it from both ends and take a look and just make sure that it's got that basket shape. Okay, that's working out very nicely, actually. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the second layer. We've got 2 layers for this. Yeah, so you can tell here where you have this, well, it's almost kind of, I'm not sure how to explain it, but you can tell that down here it's kind of flat. Here it has a little bit of the beginning of another scallop. These 2 sections here need to meet right at this seam. Okay, so we're gonna do one at a time. Then we're gonna cover this up with a little acorn, so you won't even see that seam once all said and done. But go ahead and get your glue on this second layer here. And just make sure you get some glue all the way out to the very edges on both sides. We want those to sit nice and flush. And I'm going to start at the bottom here because we've got a nice defined score mark to help us with the initial placement. And then just kind of work your way up. And now a little trick here is to make sure that as it's drying to kind of help it curve a little bit. You don't want it to dry flat. You want it to dry curved like so. Okay. And again, try to maintain that handle shape throughout the gluing process here, because when that glue solidifies, it'll help kind of keep it in that shape as well. It won't be floppy. Okay, so that looks good. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. Grab the other piece, get your glue on all of these, and then we'll make sure again to get enough glue all the way at the bottoms, or the ends I should say. Okay, and we'll head on down here, get it lined up with the very edge of our little score mark here, nice and centered. And then work your way up as you go, and it should meet. I need to keep this bent more. As you bend it, it will sort of need to be a little bit longer. Oops. Come on. There we go. And that turned out nice. I'm just using my table to help me with this. A little extra leverage never hurt. Okay, and I may need to add some additional glue to this. We'll see here in a second. Okay, so I've got the handle shape, and I do have some little areas there that are not sitting as flat as I'd like. So I'll just take a scrap piece of paper, throw a little bit of glue right on the very end of my scrap, and then just kind of tuck it underneath any of these little scallops that maybe are not sitting pretty here. And then just press those into place. Just give them a little extra attention. There we go. That'll do it. Okay. So there's our handle, and I've got the same situation on the other side here, so I'm going to clean that up real quick. So if this happens to you, don't worry about it. You can always go back in and clean things up. Give it a little extra love. It was just these two here, and maybe that one. And I could take the other side of this and wipe off the excess so it doesn't go everywhere. And just press that down. Give it a little extra love. There we go. And again, just trying to maintain that basket shape. You know what, that side too just didn't work out the way I want it to. So we're going to clean that up and then pop this in place, get our remaining panels in place. Our basket's done. I will be adding a few elements of bling, probably just some rhinestones to the handle. and call it a day. I gotta go hit up the grocery store and find something cute to put in here, something delicious. And then see who the lucky recipient will be. Okay, so as I mentioned, and we're gonna try to center this as accurately as possible. Now luckily we have a nice scallop here that's already centered, so we want to try to get this smaller section centered along with that little scallop. And I'm simply just going to put glue on this tab here, try to get it all the way out to the very edge here. We want that to not come ripping away. And this is, we're putting this on the section that does not have the little panel on it. Okay, get that lined up nicely, nice and centered. Give it a little nudge if you need to. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then we'll grab the other side, get our glue on the green section of the tab, or on the green section of the handle, I should say. And we'll get that nice and centered as well. That looks good. Make sure that it is in fact nice and centered. And just hold that in place for a moment while it sets. And then we just pop on our final panels here. That looks good. So I'll just throw some glue on the two remaining panels, get those in place just like we did the previous four. We have a little bit of that green sticking out, but at least it will look a lot more clean than it would if we didn't do it this way. Get that nice and centered. There we have it. You can see how nice that looks. There we go. And then the last side here. Move it that way so you can see it better. There we go. And just get that one in place. And we'll be good to go. Okay, so last but not least, we have our little acorn here. And there's a brown portion, which is that little cap, and then the actual seed. So just throw a little bit of glue on the back of that, glue it to the top of the main piece. I did also hit this with just a tiny little bit of ink, just to, like I say, muddy it up. And then we're going to pop this right on top of the seam of our handle, just to hide that, so everything looks nice and polished and clean. Throw a tiny little bit of glue right on there and hide that seam. There you go, look at that. Looks like it is seamless for the most part. No one's really gonna notice. Nevertheless, a beautiful project. Perfect for a cute little fall gift for a loved one or a friend, family member, whoever it may be. Again, throw some crinkle fill in there. Fill it with whatever you want. It could be great for a child as well. But anyway, I'm gonna throw a few little rhinestones right here just to give it a little bling and call it a day. So anyway, that's pretty much it for our autumn gift basket. I love it, I hope you do too, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head on over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. While you're there, hit the little bell so that you get notifications anytime we release a new product, whether it be free or paid, or any of our instructional tutorials on software or machines or whatnot. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, I would love to see it, and so would the 22,000 plus other dreamers that inspire us. So head on over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or you can type in this little URL here. It'll take you right there. And yeah, visit us, inspire us, and be inspired. But most of all, I look forward to crafting with you again.